Hello again, YouTube chess fans. In my previous videos, my attempt was to teach the beginner who doesn't even know how to make pieces move, how to play chess, and teach them what the board is, how the pieces move, the values of the pieces, etc. The one thing I didn't go over, and many beginners, in fact even some people who have been playing, don't know how to start the game. Well, in order for me to approach that, I had this great idea. First, we're going to review everything that I tried to teach you, only we're going to do it even better. I found that this specific chess program, Chessmaster 10th edition, has a chess academy by Josh Waitzkin. Josh Waitzkin is the international master that inspired the movie Searching for Bobby Fischer. This movie was decades old. If you want to look it up, he had went to UBISOFT and gave them this whole academy thing that they do in this Chessmaster. In any case, I'm going to actually play that for you in parts. I'm not going to, obviously I can't play the entire thing. There's a lot to it, but I recommend this program or any of the Chessmaster series. This particular one I'm going to be using is Chessmaster 10th edition. They now have 11. This is actually many years old. But I would look into the Chessmaster series. They have excellent tutorials, and you're going to get a taste of it now. One of the questions, of course, is how do you start the game? Well, first of all, as I went over before, and Josh Waitzkin is going to go over white square on the right, and how the pawns move. Opening, which is something I didn't cover, deals with taking control over the center in the beginning of the game. So, without further boring you to death with my voice, I'm actually going to play parts of this, excuse me, I'm going to play parts of this introduction, and you'll be seeing me click through some of the things, fast forwarding, because I can't show you everything. There's a lot to it. But I think that when you see this video and you go through this academy of Josh Waitzkin's off of the Chessmaster program, I think you're going to like this. And it might even encourage you to buy this software. I don't know what's available anymore on the Chessmaster software. Again, it's kind of old, but I encourage you to find it, even if it's in a used software store. And they have many platforms now. This one is a Windows platform. In fact, this one was for Windows XP, but I'm running it on Windows 7, so it seems to be working. So without further ado, I'm going to start the introduction.
Welcome to the Chessmaster Academy. I'm Josh Waitzkin. I fell in love with chess when I was 6 years old, and I've spent much of my life in the sway of this beautiful, riveting art form. Over the years, I've won and lost countless national and world championship games around the globe, and I've emerged from my experience with an appreciation for the journey and a passion for learning. An amazing thing about chess is you can study it for a lifetime and still discover new mysteries every day, and yet you can also feel the essential beauty of the game in your first lessons. If you have not yet touched the mystery of chess, you're in for a treat. In this academy, I'll lay the foundation for your exploration of what I call the black and white jungle. In part 1 of the course, we'll learn the rules of chess. I'll teach you the powers and values of the pieces, and once you've internalized these basics, we'll be ready to enter the heart and soul of the game. In part 2 of the course, I'll teach the fundamentals of chess tactics, and you'll possess the building blocks to the arsenal that propelled me to the top of the scholastic chess world. Then, in part 3, we'll delve into some more subtle, strategical ideas that will be powerful on and off the chessboard.
And that's what happens. It basically starts showing you these different things. He starts talking to you, and I go over to the right side, which you cannot see, and I click next.
I have come to believe that the best way to approach chess is in a manner that teaches us about ourselves and about learning in general. I recommend that you keep your eyes open for the parallels between life and chess. They're out there, waiting to be discovered. Over time, you'll internalize the lessons of this academy, and the principles will become part of your intuition. Then the chessboard will become a thrilling arena for you to express yourself with creativity and freedom. Before we begin, I'd like to make a few suggestions. As you progress through this academy and beyond, please remember, growth comes at the point of resistance. This course will gradually stretch the mind, so don't get frustrated if you're stumped or forget something. I can't tell you how many chess problems have confused me until the answer dawned like a revelation. I may sometimes ask a question which feels a bit tricky. In general, the more effort you put into these challenges, the more you'll get out of the experience. The idea is not to get everything right, but to do the best you can with the knowledge you have so far, and then to soak in my explanations. If I've learned anything over the years, it's that the road to mastery is about growth, not perfection. So with that spirit, let's dive in. Welcome to the Black and White Jungle.
So, without playing too much of this, I want to explain that, again, this academy goes further than what I tried to do. I tried to teach you about the way the pieces move and en passant and the value of the pieces, etc. I found that for the purposes of education, that this academy, I didn't realize it before until now, but this academy actually covers all that, and it does it better than I did. So again, I recommend this software to all young people who are trying to learn the game. I highly recommend it for parents who are trying to teach their kids who don't know too much themselves. The software is comprehensive learning tools to really get the person into the game. So let me continue without boring you too much again, and we're going to the next topic.
Let's begin with the chessboard. There are 64 squares on the chessboard, 32 light, 32 dark. When we talk about the game, the lines that run vertically up and down the board are called files. The lines that run horizontally across the board are called ranks. And the lines that cut diagonally through the board are called diagonals. So these are your files, these are your ranks, and these are your diagonals. Now remember, when you set up a chessboard, you always want to have a light square in the lower right-hand corner of the board. And in the beginning of the game, white always goes first. We'll get to that later.
Something I probably forgot to mention, white always goes first. You know, when you start a game, it's usually typical flipping a coin or something to that effect. What I usually do is I take a pawn, a black pawn and a white pawn, I mix them up in my hands and I put them in back of my back, and my opponent chooses what hand, and that's who goes. That's the color they choose. But white always goes first, and you just find a fair way to choose what color you start with. Next topic.
Now we're going to learn the language of chess, what's called algebraic notation. The vertical columns on the chessboard, the files, are lettered A through H. This is the A file, the B file, C, D, E, F file, G file, H file. The horizontal ranks are numbered 1 through 8. This is the first rank, second rank, third rank, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth rank. So if we're talking about this square, we line up the letter, which we see as the D, and the number 5. This is the D5 square. This is the F6 square. This square over here, line up the letter and the number, the C7 square. Why don't you try a few?
Now, he's asking for me to try a few, but I'm going to skip through some of this. We don't need to take the entire course, but I did want to show you how comprehensive this is. And again, this is going to reinforce everything I try to teach you, and in fact, it's doing a better job. So I'm going to keep clicking next, and if you see me skip through things, don't panic.
Let's try a few exercises. Touch the D5 square with your cursor.
Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and do that one.
You got it.
Okay, to show you
now
how.
Touch the B1 square.
See, now he's asking me to touch the B1 square. I'm not going to go through all this. I just wanted to show you how comprehensive this beginning course is, and it goes further. It goes into comprehensive end games and further than that. There's also available on this Chessmaster that opening practice and things like that. There's also tests. You can test your skills. You can get a rating. So, but of course, we're not going to go through any of that. The purpose of my videos on YouTube now are at least for beginners and for people who don't even know how to play the game. So we're only going to cover the very starting of chess. As soon as my clock finishes chiming, I'll click the next button.
Now touch the E7 square. Touch the H. Touch the A. Now let's get to know the chess pieces.
Okay, here we go.
This is the king. This is the queen, the rook, the bishop, the knight, and the pawn. Now let's learn the values of all the pieces. The pawn is the weakest piece on the chessboard. It's also known as the unit of value in chess. So the strengths of the other pieces are measured by the number of pawns that they're worth. The knight is worth around 3 pawns. The bishop is also worth around 3 pawns. We'll talk more about this later. The knight and the bishop are both worth around 3 pawns, but they move very, very differently. In some positions, knights are stronger. In other positions, bishops are stronger. And you'll learn about these nuances in a little bit. For now, knight 3 pawns, bishop 3 pawns. The rook is a powerful piece. It's worth 5 pawns. The queen is the most powerful piece on the chessboard. It's worth 9 pawns. The king doesn't really have a value that can be measured with pawns because the king, though not so powerful, cannot be lost. The aim of the game is to capture the enemy king. So your king has infinite value, although not all that much power. Now that you know all the chess pieces, let's learn how to set up the board. Remember, both sides begin with a light square in the lower right-hand corner. So let's say you're white. The rooks go in the corners. Next to them come the knights, then the bishops, and finally the queen and king. An easy way to remember what color square to put your king and queen on is that the king always begins on the opposite color of what it is. So if it's a white king, it begins on a dark square. If it's a black king, it begins on a light square. Now the pawns cover the entire second rank. You begin with 8 pawns. Remember, I said the pawn is the least valuable piece, but you have a lot of them.
Okay. He referred to the king as going on the opposite color. In the next part, he's going to tell you that the queen goes on her own color. So that's what I explained to you in the other videos. But here's the next part.
So here we see white's setup. The rooks are in the corners. The white king is beginning on a dark square. The queen is beginning on the same color as she is. She's a white queen beginning on a light square. Bishops and knights, and the pawns cover the entire second rank. Now for black, it's the same. The pawns cover the entire 7th rank. The rooks go in the corners. The black king begins on a light square. The black queen begins on a dark square.
Okay.
Now it's your turn. Click on each piece and drag it to its setup position on the board.
Okay, we're not going to go through this, and we're going to go to the next topic.
So we've just learned the values of all the pieces and how to set them up. Now we'll learn how they move. The chess pieces might seem strange to you at first, but soon they'll feel natural, almost a part of you. Let's begin with the unit of value in chess, the pawn. Individually, pawns are the least powerful of all pieces, but there are more of them on the board than any other piece, so it's essential to learn how to use them in coordination. The game begins with each side possessing 8 pawns all lined up on the 2nd and 7th rank, as you've learned. In the beginning of the game, the primary function of the pawn is to take control of the center of the board and to protect the king.
I hope you heard that. In the opening, the object is to take control of the center of the board and protect the king.
So this is how the pawn moves. On each pawn's first move, it has the option of moving ahead 1 square or 2. It's very important to remember that after its first move, pawns can only move ahead 1 square at a time. So here this e2 pawn can move to either e3 or e4, because it's that pawn's first move. But once it's on e4, it can only move to e5.
Okay, so now we're going through what I went through in my original videos, telling you how pawns are the strangest ones because they have various different ways of moving. First move, you have the option to move it 2 spaces or 1. but they only capture at an angle. In any case, I'm going to let Josh Waitzkin explain it to you even better than I did.
The pawn possesses a number of unique qualities. First of all, the pawn is the only piece that cannot move backwards. So as we'll explore in Part 3 of the Academy, we have to be careful not to overextend our pawn structure. You'll see more about that later. Also, the pawn is the only piece that captures differently from how it moves. Pawns move straight ahead, but they capture diagonally. This is tricky. So in this position, the white d3 pawn can capture black's pawn on c4, but not the black pawn on d4. In this position, the white pawn on d3 can't move at all. It's blockaded by the black pawn on d4, and there's nothing for it to capture. Despite being small, each pawn has enormous potential. The pawn's greatest power is called promotion. Anytime a pawn successfully journeys to the end of the board, it can transform into any other chess piece on the board, except for the king, of course. A queen, rook, knight, or bishop. We almost always promote into a queen, but there are rare exceptions which I'll show you a bit later.
I accidentally hit the zoom button. Let me see if that's... I hope you're still seeing this.
Highlight all the legal pawn moves.
Okay, I'm not going to go through this.
In this position, what do you think white should do?
I'll do this one.
Good job. White can capture the pawn and will soon promote. h4. Then black will play a5. This exercise is a little bit trickier. It's black's move. What would you play?
Now, in this one, it explains why it's important to know how much to move the pawn. The idea is this. If black right now moves in a particular move, he'll allow white to capture him and white will end up winning the game. But if he knows, what he's asking me is, how would you move if you were black? And the answer is, you would move this, the two spaces allowed for the first move.
Good job. After black plays e5, white's position self-destructs, because the only possible pawn moves loses a pawn. After e5, white's forced to play d4, after which black can capture.
See?
There's a term for this type of position in chess, called zugzwang. What this means is that if I'm in zugzwang, any move that I make will hurt my position. I'm paralyzed, but I'm forced to move. So here you can see that come across on the board. If it's white's move, the only legal move is d3 to d4, after which black can capture the pawn. Now interestingly, if it were black's move and he played e4, the only legal move, white could capture that pawn. So in fact, this is a position of mutual zugzwang, which means whosever move it is will be in a big disadvantage. Take a look at this setup. It's a little bit more complicated. Let's say you have the black pieces. White has two options, either e3 or e4. Let's take a look at both. If I play e3, what should you do?
So this explains being the first person to move isn't always an advantage. White is always the first one to go. Start of the game. It's not always an advantage. In this particular situation, for example, the first person to move is always the person that's going to lose, because black knows what to do after the person does it. So, in this example, he's asking me what would I do. I would move it to 2, because the next, in other words, you have to move. You can't. There's no passing in chess. You have to make a move or resign or whatever. But the point is that white is going to be forced to move some piece, and since there's only 2 pawns on the board right now, which is kind of silly, but the point is that as soon as white moves, he's going to lose. So the answer is black's first pawn move, this particular pawn, the answer is to move it 2 spaces.
Good job. Now my only option loses the game for me, as we saw last example. After e4, you can capture the pawn. Now let's look at this position and say that I play e4 on the first move. What would you do?
So again, this gives the same example. In this case, I would move it only once. 1 space.
That's right. Here your best move is f6, once again paralyzing me. If I play e5, which is my only option, you can capture the pawn f takes e5. So in this position we can see that if white plays e3, black's best move is f5. If white plays e4, black's best move is f6. And in both cases, white will lose a pawn because he had to move first. So in fact, if you go back, whosever move it is in this position will lose. Take some time and work that out on your own.
Okay, so that explains what I was trying to tell you very briefly in my first videos. Explains it much better and much more succinctly and much more specifically. So I'm hoping that I can show enough of these videos, enough of this Academy to give you the idea and get you to start playing chess on your own. But I'm not going to go too much further than this. I'm going to go to the next couple of examples, and I'm not going to be able to show you the entire thing, of course, because there's hours. Trust me, there is hours worth of chess lessons on this Chessmaster software. Again, I highly recommend this. If you don't know who Josh Waitzkin is, he's an international master, and I think I've mentioned this in the beginning of the video. He is the inspiration for the movie Searching for Bobby Fischer, some decade or so ago. It was a young man, actually a kid, 7, 8, 9 years old, named Josh Waitzkin, portrayed by famous actors and stuff like that, who became an international master. He was a chess prodigy. He was beating his father at an early age and stuff like that. Amongst the people they portrayed in that movie was Bruce Pandolfini, Grandmaster, who was Josh Waitzkin's coach when he was a kid. And in any case, I don't want to keep boring you. I'm going to continue to the next step. And if I skip over anything and you notice it, don't worry about it. I'm doing it because there's a purpose behind getting this video to be shorter than it would be if I didn't. So here we go.
Take a look at this position. What's white's best move?
Okay, what's white's best move? Let's all of us look at this. If I move this pawn, black will capture it. So that's not a good move. This one, same thing. That's not a good move. However, this pawn is on its original square, and I have a choice here to move it 1 or 2 spaces. Obviously, to me, moving it here is going to put black in the position where no matter what he does, I'm going to capture him.
Good job. The point here is that any move that black makes will self-destruct. Black's in Zugzwang. If he plays c4, d takes c4, wins a pawn. If he plays d5, e takes d5, wins the game. And if he plays g5, white can play h takes g5.
Okay.
Now we're going to have to learn one of the more tricky rules of chess.
This one's about en passant.
French for in passing. This is how it works. Let's say that a white e-pawn has advanced to the 5th rank. Effectively, this pawn is keeping an eye on the f and d pawns of black because of the following rule. If either of those pawns advances 2 squares, the white pawn has the option of capturing it diagonally, as if it only moved 1 square. So if d5, white can play e takes d6. There are 2 important stipulations to remember. First of all, this is a one-shot deal. If white chooses not to capture the pawn immediately after d5, then he'll lose the chance forever. Also, say white has a pawn on e5 and black has a pawn on d6. If black plays d6 to d5, white cannot capture en passant. This rule only applies if a pawn is moved 2 squares forward, passing an enemy pawn that is residing on its 5th rank. And don't forget that you only have 1 chance. Here are a couple exercises that involve en passant.
So, as I explained in a couple different videos, and I showed you some sample games, en passant is very specific. It's very specific to the pawn's first move, the ability for it to move 2 spaces. En passant only works when an opponent passes you by moving his pawn the optional 2 spaces past your pawn that's on your 5th rank. It does not work if your opponent has moved the pawn 1 space already. Okay, and that goes vice versa for you too. Okay, so let's go through the examples he's about to give.
So in this position, black plays d5. Show me all white's possible captures.
So I'm going to go ahead and go through this exercise to show you. Okay, all the possible captures are the en passant captures. I could either take en passant right now, and remember, if I don't do it now, I lose my chance. I can't do it later. I have to decide if I'm going to do it right now. So these are my possible captures of the black pawn. I could either go like this.
Good job, but there's more. Keep looking.
Or like this.
Good job, but there's more. Keep looking.
Or, just so happens, there happens to be a pawn here too. I could capture that pawn. And remember, when I do this, I lose my opportunity to capture that pawn en passant.
Good job. Pawns captured diagonally, whether it's en passant or a normal capture.
Okay, so I'm going to go to the next video or the next section, and I haven't decided whether or not I'm going to continue more of this, but we'll find out as soon as I get there, because I haven't actually watched this entire thing because I never needed to. I've had this software for many years and never went through the beginning Academy because I didn't need to. But I find it very enlightening here, because it really does explain a lot better than I've been taught in my childhood.
In this position, black plays b5. Show me all white's possible captures.
Okay, he's reiterating the fact that I don't have the en passant capture here because he was already on 6. Okay, he was already on the 6th. In other words, he didn't start off in starting position. I cannot capture en passant here. I can capture this pawn though.
Good job. The only capture is c takes d6. Now let's learn about the king. The king is the most valuable piece in the game, because if we lose him, it's all over. The goal in chess is to capture the enemy king while providing sufficient protection to your own king. But despite its precious nature, the king is not terribly mobile. In this position, the white king on e5 can move to all of these squares. It's easy to remember how the king moves. It can move one square in any direction, as long as that square isn't defended by an enemy piece. So here the white king can move to any of these squares. In this position, with the king on c2, the king can move to these squares. So remember, a king can move diagonally, horizontally, or vertically one square whenever it wants to. In the beginning of the game, we want to keep the king safe, protect him behind a phalanx of pawns. But later, when there is less danger lurking, we can use the king actively. With its dependable pattern of motion, the king can be a very powerful short-range warrior. It's critical to learn how to judge when the appropriate time is to activate the king. I'll develop this in the endgame section of the course.
Now this covers something I haven't covered yet. Using the king as a weapon, as one of the soldiers, and I'm glad I'm being able to show you this. So this is hopefully going to be able to get you to learn how to play chess a lot faster than perhaps you've been taught. I know that when I started playing chess, I knew how the pieces moved when I was a kid and when I was a teenager, but I never really understood why it was so fascinating to people. And hopefully by me allowing with the UBISOFT Chessmaster program, allowing me to show you the enthusiasm of Josh Waitzkin, he's showing you why it's an important learning tool. It's not just chess, it's like life. Okay, let me continue that.
So you know how the king moves. We also know that the goal in chess is to capture the king. Whenever the king is threatened, it's called check. In this position, if white plays the pawn from e4 to e5, we know the pawn's captured diagonally, the black king is in check. This is marked with a plus mark, by the way, in notation. So here this would be e5, check. The black king would have to move, and we can see that the black king could move to e6, e7, d7, c7, or c6. The black king couldn't move to c5 or d5, or capture on e5 because the white king defends those squares. It's an illegal move for a king to ever move to a square where it can be captured. This This is called check.
And that's what I try to explain about bringing two kings together. You cannot bring two kings together. That basically carves that in stone. Okay, next.
So when you're in check, you can just move out of the way. The real goal in chess is checkmate. In this position, white can play e7, which is checkmate. The black king is attacked, but it can't move anywhere. The c8 and e8 squares are defended by the white d7 pawn. The e7 pawn of white attacks the black king, and the white king defends that pawn, defends the d7 pawn, and also guards the c7 square. Black can't go anywhere. This is called checkmate. This is your goal in chess.
And now we're going to also get into something that I didn't cover yet. I didn't cover stalemate. It just so happens that bringing your pawn and your king like that, depending on whose move it is, you don't want to lose the game or go into a stalemate. And when you had a winning position, one of the most disappointing things in chess is when you lose or stalemate in a winning position. And it has happened. I've done it myself at least 100 times. And it's talked about a lot. So in the next section, he's going to talk about stalemate and what is known as a draw. You know, grandmasters will often, during a tournament, will agree to a draw. There's a draw by agreement and all that stuff. But there's also a stalemate situation when a player makes a blunder, allowing the possibility that the opponent does not have a legal move. Usually in grandmaster tournaments, they either resign or agree to a draw long before that situation happens. But in friendly games and between me and my friends, you know, I'm no grandmaster for sure. There are times when I blunder and end up coming up to an end game where I foolishly get myself into a stalemate. So here comes the next part.
There's one more way for the game to end. In this position, it's white's move. What can he do? Well, any answer you gave would have to be wrong because there's no square you can move to. c1 and e1 are guarded by the black d2 pawn. e2, d2, and c2 are guarded by the black king. So in fact, white can't move anywhere, but white's not in check. This is called stalemate. The game is drawn. So,
it's something I didn't cover in my beginning. I will be giving you more in the future about chess puzzles and stuff like that I mentioned in my later videos. But this is very important to cover, especially for the beginner chess player. What is stalemate and what is a draw? And the differences between stalemate and draw. I mean, there's a draw by agreement and there's stalemate where you get into the situation that you see on the screen now, where if it's white's move, it's a stalemate. So if it's black's move, the only thing you can do is let black, you know, black would have to back up and let white take the pawn, and it would be a draw anyway because there'd be two kings left on the board. But the point is that there is a way to get that pawn to queen or to promote and then winning the game. The fact that black, in other words, what I said before, was that black had the winning position but blundered white into a stalemate. Alright, next.
So we know if we attack the king, it's check. The king can move away. If we attack the king and the king can't go anywhere, that's checkmate. The game is over and the player who delivered the checkmate wins. Stalemate is when you cannot make any legal moves with your king, but you're not in check. The game is drawn.
Okay. And that basically nails it. That basically writes it in stone.
Now let's do some exercises to get used to king moves. Here, touch all the squares the white king can move to.
Okay, we're going to fast forward through these. I'm going to see if there's anything else of interest. I'm just going to talk while I fast forward.
In this exercise, white's in check. What do you think the best move is?
Yeah, well, we're going to go ahead and do this one. The best move, of course, is to capture the second pawn, because the less pawns that black has, the better.
Good job. The white king can capture the d4 pawn. Of course, taking the f5 pawn is bad, because it puts the king in danger.
In fact, he
Here
can't.
the white king is in check. What is white's only legal move?
What is white's only legal move? Okay, we'll go through this one and then we'll call it quits. The only legal move here is this F4 square. White cannot capture this pawn because of this pawn. White cannot go here because of the king, and here because of the king. White cannot go here because of that pawn. However, white can go here.
Good job. The only unprotected square is F4.
Okay, so we're gonna fast forward through the rest of these. I haven't seen these yet. Again, I've owned this software for years. I just never had the need to go through the beginning stuff. But it was my intention on these YouTube videos to teach the beginner how to play chess.
Here white is in check.
Yes.
In this position it's white's move.
Okay.
The rook is a very powerful piece, worth 5 pawns.
We're up to the rook now.
In this position, the rook on e5 can touch any of these squares. The rook can move as far as it wants to, horizontally or vertically, until a piece stands in its way. So, in this position, this rook can move to any of these squares. Now, if there were a pawn, say, on c6, the rook could only move to these squares, and it would also have the option of capturing the black pawn on c6. Rook on c3 takes c6. The rook is an excellent long-distance operator. We want him on open lines because he can't jump over other pieces. On an empty board, the rook controls the same number of squares whether placed in the center or the side of the board. As we'll see later, this is very unusual. Most chess pieces are much more powerful when centrally placed. Let's practice moving the rook around.
Okay, we're not going to practice moving the rook around. I did want you to see that because it explains something else I explained to you in one of my first videos about capturing, and the piece capturing lands on and ends up on the piece that it captured, or the space that the captured piece was on. In other words, it's not like checkers. We don't jump over pieces to take them. Even though the knight jumps over, the knight does not jump over and take pieces. The knight has to land on, just like all the other pieces, has to land on the square that the opponent's piece is on that you're capturing. So I just wanted you to see that, and I'm going to fast forward through some of these. I might even skip a few words.
In this exercise, move the rook. Here, take 2 moves. In this position, can the black rook capture a white pawn?
No. Yes. I mean, excuse me. No, he can't capture the one on b2, but he can capture the one on h6. Okay.
That's right. As you know, the king is the most important piece in your chess army. Protecting your king from attack is how you keep from losing the game. Because it's so important, there's a special move called castling, which you can use to put your king in a safe place. Castling is the only time in chess in which you're allowed to move 2 of your pieces, a king and a rook, in one move. Here's a board set up with only the white king and the 2 white rooks. You can castle either to the king's side, which is called castling short, or to the queen's side, which is referred to as castling long.
And I did go through this castling with one of my specific videos about castling. And when you're playing a game, especially if you're playing in a publicized tournament, the proper way to castle is you must pick up your king first, signifying to everybody around you that you're going to castle. Because if you pick up your rook, you can move the rook anywhere. So if you're going to castle, if your intention is to castle, you need to pick up your king, move it to the 2 spaces left or right, depending on which side you want to castle on it, and place it down, and then pick up your rook and put it on the other side of the king. That's a very important idea, because if you're in a tournament situation and you end up touching your rook first, there is specific etiquette that governs that.
In this exercise, we'll castle kingside. First, move the king 2 spaces towards the rook, to g1. Then move the rook to the other side of the king, on f1.
Okay, so we know that.
In this exercise, we'll castle queenside. Move the king 2 spaces towards the rook to c1.
We know that too.
Move the rook. In a game, castling moves the king away from the center of the board where it's more vulnerable to attack. Note how much safer the 2 kings are after they castle. Here, white castles queenside, and black castles kingside. It's usually a good idea to castle early in a game, both to protect the king and give the rook a chance to control the center files.
Okay, so I'm going to continue to click fast forward on this. I can't show you everything, but some of these things are reinforcing the stuff that I tried to teach. In fact, they're doing a better job at it. I'm going to fast forward the stuff that is over redundant. So I'm going to click next.
There are 4 important rules that govern castling. Rule number 1. The king and rook may not have moved from their starting squares. In this board setup, white cannot castle to either side because both rooks have moved from their starting positions. Even if one of the rooks moves back, white still cannot castle.
That was something I attempted to explain. I hope I explained it properly. The king cannot, you cannot castle if the king is moved at all. You cannot castle on the side that the rook has moved, but you can castle on the other side if the king didn't move and if the rook on that side that you want to castle on did not move. I believe I had a video on that and explained that, and this reinforces that.
Rule number 2. All of the spaces between the rook and the king must be unoccupied. In this diagram, white cannot castle Kingside because the knight is in the way, but he can castle Queenside because all of the spaces between the king and the rook are empty.
Okay. There's no need for explanation on that one.
Rule number 3. The king cannot be in check. In this position, it would appear that white can castle Kingside because neither the king nor the rook has moved from its starting square, and the spaces between the rook and the king are empty. However, the white king is currently in check from the black pawn on d2, so he cannot castle.
This is very important. I did explain this. This illustrates it much better than I've ever illustrated it. The king cannot castle out of check. My previous videos had said that specifically. If you're in check, you cannot castle out of check. In this particular screen, the king's only option is to capture that pawn. Well, I'm sorry. His 2 options are to move to the left or to capture that pawn. No matter what he does, he immediately loses his right to castle at any time because he moved the king. However, there are situations where you can be in check and you can block the check or capture the piece checking you or something to that effect, and not moving the king and not moving the rook, you can still have the right to castle later on. In this case, that right's going to be lost because you have the white king has to move right now. Whether he captures that pawn or moves it to the left, that king has to move, therefore losing his right to castle at any time. Alright?
Rule number 4. The squares that the king passes over cannot be under attack, and since you can never move your king into check, the square to which it's moving can't be under attack either. In this position, the spaces between the king and the rook on the queen side are open. However, the d1 square is guarded by the black rook on d8, so the white king cannot pass over it. Castling is illegal. In this position, the c1 square is guarded by the black rook on c8, so the king can't land on it. Castling is illegal here as well.
Okay. I did go over that as well in the same video. I didn't give this specific diagram, but again, you cannot castle through a check. You can't castle if a square that you have to pass through is being attacked by the opponent, and of course you can't castle into a check either. So this particular example exemplifies that specifically.
Now that you know how the rook moves, let's take a look at a few checkmates. In this position, white can actually checkmate the black king in one move. Do you see it?
This is interesting. I never thought of this one before, but this is, yeah, sure, you move the rook. Because the king cannot move here, here, or here. A simple check here would be checkmate.
Yep, that's it. The black king is trapped on
Next.
Here's another variation of the back rank mate.
This one I gave
White
you.
to move. Do you see it?
Yeah, this one I gave you in the video.
Yep, that's it.
Next.
In this position, there are a lot of pieces on the board, but if we're familiar with the back rank mate, we should be able to spot it here. Black to move. What do you see?
I'm going to end it here. This is a lot of the Academy, more than I expected to actually show you. There is a back rank mate here somewhere. If you want to hang out for a minute, I'll try to figure it out. But the point here I'm trying to make is that for a beginner chess player, the idea is to really get to know how the pieces move, the rules of castling, the rules of en passant, the rules of capturing overall, how the pieces move again, etc. is the very first thing you need to master. If you don't know how to move the pieces, you're not going to know how to start the game. Starting the game is still confusing. Again, starting the game is the openings. I'm not very good at teaching openings, but the ideas of the 4 principles of openings, I may actually be able to show you on these next videos. I might have to pause it to get to that point, because I can't show you everything that's in this video, you know, in the Chessmaster software. But to be able to know what to do first. If you're playing white, generally most of the time the E pawn, the D pawn, and the knights, in order to take control of the center of the board. But nevertheless, I'm going to pause this and perhaps no, you know what, I'm not going to pause this. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to click hint, and let's see what this goes, or let's see where this goes. It says try to attack all the squares that the white king can go to with one move. Well, let me see. The white king can go here. The white king can go here. The white king can go here, but he can't because of that white knight. Oh, the white king. Wait. In this position, also plays the board, but familiar. Oh, it's black to move. Ah. Well, let's go ahead and flip the board. Let's see. Let's go ahead and flip the board. Alright, now we got a different view. And it says, you don't see this on your screen because I have the a specific section selected. It says that in this position there are a lot of pieces on the board, but we're familiar with the back rank mate. We should be able to spot it here. Black to move, what do you see? Okay, and the hint was try to attack all the squares that the white king can go to with one move. So where can the white king go to? The white king can't go very far, can it? It can only go here and here. Well, you know, I'm actually saying, wait, you know, this is easy. Actually, I'm playing with you. The fact is that all you have to do is this. You see it? Because white can't put anything in the way of this rook.
Good job. The correct move is Rook A1, Checkmate, a back-rank mate. It's important to learn the patterns on an empty board so we can have the tools to navigate the complexities of chess.
So I'm going to end it here, and enough with the shenanigans and me trying to play like I don't know what I'm doing. But this I'm going to pause it here and see if there's anything else that I might be able to show you in the next couple of slides. But there's too much here to play the whole thing. So I'm going to hit the buttons that stop the recording right now, and I'll come back to you in as far as you're concerned, it's going to be a couple of seconds. And here it goes. Okay, I've skipped over all the other pieces. Josh Waitzkin is actually explaining how every piece moves, but I want to focus on the special pieces. We've already covered in depth the pawn, which is actually a special piece, the way it moves and captures and all that stuff. The next special piece would be the knight, and the king was already covered, of course. So after the knight, I think I'll pause it again and see if there's anything else that I might have missed in my previous videos, or if I think that the Chessmaster software, Josh Waitzkin's Academy, gives a much better explanation. I'll go through that. But right now, I'm going to let him explain to you about the knight. And maybe if you were confused about it before, I don't think you will be now. So here it goes. I'm going to replay this.
Now we're up to a unique piece, the knight. The knight is the only chess piece that can jump over other pieces, but it can't go very far in one leap. It moves in an L pattern, 2 squares in one direction and 1 square in another, or step, step, side, as my mother puts it. So if the knight is here on d5, it can move to these squares, step, step, side, or step, step, side. It's also interesting to note that the knight always moves from a light square to a dark square, or vice versa. Because of its counterintuitive style, sometimes the knight can be confusing. So let's look at a graphic that might help you out.
Okay. Let's look at a graphic.
In this graphic you can see how many moves it takes the knight to reach each square. If you click on that square, Chessmaster will play out the knight's path to reach it. By watching these movements, you'll start to become familiar with the flow of the knight.
Oh, wow. I didn't know this was there. Hey, I might just use this myself. Hey, you know, it seems like the the chess programs are always better at moving the knight than I am. Let's play with this. I'm gonna keep this in my video. I'm gonna play with this. Here we go. So it takes 2 moves for the knight to reach this square, right? Okay. Takes 3 moves to move it here, huh? Well, that is cool. Well, you know, if you watch this and I continue this, you just might be a better chess player than I was in a much shorter period of time. Let's go over here. 4. That is really cool. Well, I'm gonna leave it at that, and I may be looking at that myself tonight and the next couple of days just to practice that. Anyway, I'm gonna click next.
One thing you should notice is that the knight on d5 takes 4 moves to get to b7 or f7. Diagonally with 1 square in between is very far for a knight, so you can be very close to a knight, but safe from attack.
Okay.
A knight is very good in a closed game because it can jump over other pieces. We also want to find outposts for the knight. An outpost is a square deep in the enemy camp that an enemy pawn cannot attack. Click on all the squares defended by the knight.
Okay, well, we don't have to go through this, but we know it's here. We know it's here. What'd I do? Oops. My mistake. Sorry. We know it's here. And we know it's here is what I meant to click. And here. And here. And here. And here. And here. And here. Okay? So he's going to say, good job.
Now in this position, touch all the squares the knight attacks.
Okay, we don't have to go through all this.
Now in this position, click on all the...
No.
So the knight in the corner...
No.
This exercise will be good for training visualization. How many moves will it take the knight to get to g6?
Okay, there's a window on the side that asks me how many, you know, is it 2 moves, is it 3 moves, or is it 4 moves? That's a good question. Let's find out. What if I went 1, 2, 3? What if I went 1, 2, 3? Okay, so it's going to be 3.
That's right.
Very good. Okay, we're going to skip through this.
In this position, how many moves will the most common weapon of a knight is the fork. Do you see how the white knight can attack all of black's pieces if moved to the appropriate square?
Okay, we're gonna do this one. I briefly covered skewers and pins and forks in a couple of my videos. This demonstrates it very abruptly. The most common fork is the knight fork, and I did cover that in one of my videos. This particular image here is going to show you a 3-way fork, which is something I didn't show you. This fork is actually going to fork the king, the rook, and the queen.
Good work. Knight c7 check. You can attack all of the black pieces. What is black's best move? Here we see that black has 2 possible forks. Play the best one.
Well, the best one's going to be a queen fork, because I can move here and I will be able to take the white's rook. But the queen is more powerful. You want the queen. You want the, you want to take the queen off the board before you want to take the rook off the board, right? So yeah, the best one is here.
Good job. Knight b4 check wins the queen. When deciding between two possible forks, always go for the most valuable pieces. In this position, you can combine the bishop and knight to mate in two.
Oh, a mating attack. Okay, we'll try this one more time. I can. I believe if I go here, I put the black king in check. But it's not. Oh, it's mate in two. Wait a minute. Hey, this is a good question. Well, I'm going to take this test with you. So if I go here, it's check. He can go there. And then I would be able to move my bishop. Yeah, I think this is it.
That's right. Knight h6 check forces the black king to take refuge on h8, because the white bishop guards the f8 square. Now you have mate in one. Do you see it?
Yep. We're going to use the bishop to put him in check now, because the knight is controlling this square, so the king cannot move here. The king won't be able to move in front of the other king. Remember, we talked before about the bringing two kings together. We can't do that. So this is checkmate.
Bishop c3 checkmate. The knight on h6 guards the g8 square, the white king guards h7, and the bishop on c3 delivers the final blow. So here you can see that white uses the bishop, the knight, and the king to corral the black king. Coordinating your pieces in this way is central to attacking chess. Remember the theme of discovered attacks. Anywhere the white knight moves will open up a discovered check from the white queen on c3. Knights are very good for discoveries. What's your best move?
Again, I have never seen any of these videos. This is excellent. This is I'm actually showing you a lot more than I expected to show you on this software. Again, because of this, I want to recommend this highly for beginner players. What I'm not showing you is the gameplay and the characters and the strengths and the ways that this game works that you can play. What I'm only showing you is part of the Josh Waitzkin's Academy on teaching you how to play chess. As I'm showing you this, I'm actually beginning to appreciate this software more than I had before. I've had this for probably 5 years and didn't realize all this was on it. It was only when I started to make these videos that I realized that this software had this on it. In any case, I did cover discovered attacks. I did cover discovered checks and checkmates. So what Josh Waitzkin is asking me right now is what's my best way what's my best move for that knight. Okay? Obviously if I move this knight out of the way, my queen is going to check black's king. Now, a way to profit from that is to find a way to capture one of black's powerful pieces. So if I moved it here, I'm also attacking black's queen. Now he'll later on might be able to capture my knight, but that's okay because a knight for a queen, But he won't be able to right away because he's in check and he needs to get out of check first. And that'll give me time to get out of the way of the rook anyway.
That's not the best move.
Oh, how about that? This is a good move, but you have better. See? I told you I wasn't that great at chess. Another good thing about this program, kudos to Chessmaster, is that if you do make the mistake, and I'm trying to teach you, and it actually caught me in a mistake, it'll ask me to try again. So let's go ahead and try again. What is the best move? It says, remember the theme discovered attacks. Anywhere the white king moves will open up a discovered check from the white queen on c3. Knights are very good for discoveries. What is your best move? So what is my best move? And why wasn't that one my best move? I tell you what. This video is is busting me. So perhaps I'll tell you what I'm going to do. The next move I make, if it's wrong, we're going to let Chessmaster tell us both. Because I'm not a master, I'm not even an expert, and this is a great example of how Chessmaster can actually teach both of us. So, if I had instant response, I could ask you to make a comment now, but I can't do that. You'll have to comment in the later on. You can call me foolish later, but I thought that was the best one. I'm still confused. Why would that not be the best move? Well, I tell you what. I'm just gonna make the next one just to see what it says.
No, that's not quite it.
That's not quite it. Do I want to try again? No. We're gonna let Chessmaster tell us what the best move was.
The key idea is to move the knight to a square that sets up a support mate. After knight h5 check, the black king has to move, either to g8 or h7. In either case, there's mate in 1 for white. Do you see it?
Ah, so he was
now
looking...
mate in 1.
In other words, he was looking for mate in 1, not to capture the queen. So that's where I was making my mistake. Well, that's very interesting. So, in other words, no matter how far you take my videos, software is available out there to teach the beginners, and this is one of the best ones I've had. Again, I've never actually watched any of this. I watched some of the other tutorials, but I never watched this particular beginning one because I thought I was beyond it. But apparently I'm not. Fool to me, right? So, what is mate in 1? Well, I'll tell you what mate in 1 is. Because this knight now protects this square, you can now bring your queen to here.
Queen g7 checkmate. The knight on h5 guards the g7 square, and the queen finishes the game. So here you see queen and knight coordinating together. As a general rule, queen and knight is usually a little stronger than queen and bishop, because the bishop and queen are a little bit redundant, while the queen combines with the unique powers of the knight to be a devastating attacking force.
And that particular statement explains why I originally had agreed with Bobby Fischer, who is now passed away, about the knight being worth slightly more than the bishop, because the unique qualities of the knight outshine the bishop in some cases. Because first of all, it's the only piece that could jump, but also the queen acts like a bishop to begin with, but the queen is also like a rook to begin with, whereas the knight is unique to the queen. The knight doesn't, the queen cannot do what the knight does. So the combination between a queen and a knight can be much more powerful than the combination between the queen and the bishop sometimes. In this case, it's obvious.
Congratulations! You finished the lessons of part 1. Now we're up to the mastery quiz. But first, if you don't feel completely comfortable with all the pieces, then I suggest you go back and repeat whatever lessons or exercises you feel necessary. The movements of the chess pieces need to be...
We're going to stop it there. You're seeing my desktop. We're going to stop it there.